And I would pair that with a passage from Sam's book, and this is where I'm afraid the sparks will fly. The idea that Islam is a peaceful religion hijacked by extremists is a fantasy. And it is now a particularly dangerous fantasy for Muslims to indulge. It is now a truism in foreign policy circles that real reform in the Muslim world cannot be imposed from the outside. But it is important to recognize why this is so. It is so because most Muslims are utterly deranged by their religious faith. Muslims tend to view questions of public policy and global conflict in terms of their affiliation with Islam, and Muslims who don't view the world in these terms risk being branded as apostates and killed by other Muslims. These are two very different, diametrically opposed perceptions of the Muslim world, and I wonder if there's any way we can reconcile this.
I think Sam's view is perfectly legitimate if your research tools are Fox News. I think it indicates no, I mean that seriously. I think it indicates a profoundly unsophisticated view, not just of Islamic history and the social and cultural issues that are taking place within Islam, but I think it indicates a profoundly unsophisticated view of what religion is, period. It is very easy, again. I mean, the easiest thing in the world is to write a book called, The Problem with Religion. All you have to do is turn your television on. It's not interesting. It's not a unique argument. But I think that to truly understand the role that religion is playing in the socio-political conflicts that are taking place in the world and what religion provides to those conflicts requires a far more sophisticated look. Let me just say this. I found it very gratifying that we began this discussion this evening, in fact, by talking about Hrant Dink, who, of course, was murdered by an ultranationalist. Had Hrant Dink been murdered by an Islamist, of course, we would have begun by saying, aha, yet another example of the problem with Islam. Indeed, the problem with religion, as Sam's book and The End of Faith talks about. If religion is causing people to kill other people, then the problem is religion. Well, by that logic, then, the murder of Hrant Dink should be blamed on nationalism. Indeed, the sort of the most wicked acts of the 20th century are all a result not of religious ideologies, but essentially secular ideologies. We would have to blame nationalism for the fascist regimes of the 20th century. We would have to blame socialism for the Nazis. We would have to blame secularism for Mao's Cultural Revolution, which of course exterminated almost every last Buddhist monk and nun. We would have to blame communism for Stalinism. And for that matter, we would have to blame science for whatever horrors were created in its names for Hitler's eugenics experience. Now, of course, Sam will say, but that's not true. Those are bastardizations of science. They're a betrayal of the ideals of science. It's what happens when science becomes ideologized or dogmatized. Well, fine, I totally agree with that. But if you're going to excuse these other ideologies, if you're going to not blame them for the horrors committed in their names, when it's very easy to understand how nationalism can result in the murder of someone like a Turkish Armenian in Turkey, then you have to be a little bit more sophisticated about a knee-jerk blame of religion for whatever acts of violence are caused in the name of religion. We have a tendency in these kinds of comparisons to essentially compare the best ideals of one thing, say science, with the worst ideals of another thing, religion. Bad science is still science, just as bad religion is still religion. So I think that those kinds of sort of false connections, the comparison of sort of the legacy of one ideology with the legacy of another one, I think there has to be a little bit more sophistication in the ways that we make that kind of comparison.